let's talk about Keir Starmer's 6-point plan, because I'm going to be very, very happy to read it out to you right here, if you'd like me to, because here's what he says. 1, deliver economic stability. 2, cut NHS waiting times. 3, launch a new border command. 4, set up Great British Energy. 5, crack down on antisocial behaviour. 6, recruit 6,500 new teachers. Well, I never. Let's find out what John Rentoul makes of it all. John, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I mean, what have we become? Are we simply now seeking out leaders who will give us a list of to-do things that they print out like a shopping list, none of which really makes much sense, none of which really is anything more than an aspiration?
Well, no, the Tony Blair pledge card worked extremely well and provided a useful basis for the start of that Labour government. The problem with this pledge card is that there are 6 pledges on it instead of 5.
Yes. And that's about the only difference, really, isn't it?
Well, no, and also they're less specific. I mean, you're quite right. They're a bit general. They don't have numbers in them apart from that 6,500.
Right. Which is a very small number in terms of an additional number of teachers, isn't it?
Well, yes, but small is good. Small is believable.
All right.
But it doesn't set out how it's going to be paid for. Unlike the Tony Blair pledge card.
Right.
I mean, any departure...
This was Tony Blair that started this, was it?
Yeah, no, well, any departure from the eternal truths of Tony Blair are going to lead the Labour Party into the wilderness.
I'm getting a bit worried about you, John. You keep mentioning these eternal truths every time I talk to you.
Yeah, well, that's because they're eternal, Mike.
Yeah, well, that means you don't have to keep saying them, then. Just say it once and it will last forever. That'll be fine.
Well, absolutely.
But isn't the problem for Keir Starmer here that, you know, he's accusing this government of being reckless with the economy, he's accusing them of being corrupt, effectively, he's accusing them of not doing anything right, and he's giving these as the answers to make Britain work again for working people. But there aren't any answers.
No, but if he can make them work, then that would be a good thing.
Well, that's great, but you might as well say, and also I'm going to have the letter M stricken from the English language. You can do anything you like, but you put anything down on paper, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen, does it?
Well, at least he hasn't carved it in stone.
I mean, the Edstone did come up this morning. We were talking about this because I think the Edstone has now been destroyed, hasn't it? But it was for a long time housed in some warehouse down in Hastings, wasn't it?
All sorts of different stories abound about where it ended up in a lockup somewhere on the south coast. I mean that was a very good example of where Labour goes wrong trying to imitate Tony Blair and failing. So as long as Keir Starmer sticks as closely as possible to what he should be doing, which is 5 believable costed pledges. Then he'll be fine. He's departed slightly from that, but let's see if he can get back on
because
track.
the number 1, deliver economic stability, is completely nebulous. It means nothing. I mean, first of all, let's define economic stability. What is economic stability? And are we not sure that we already are stable economically? I mean, Britain is stable economically. It's not economically unstable, is it?
Well, people think it is because they remember what happened under Liz Truss.
Yeah, but it isn't. I mean, people go on and on about Liz Truss. She's only in for, like, a month. You can't keep blaming everything on Liz Truss.
Yes, but it was a rather alarming time.
It was a very alarming short period of time for some people. For other people, they're still actually reaping the whirlwind of all manner of other economic problems, which started back in sort of 2019, 2020, when COVID appeared.
Yeah, no, I agree. But what people feel is that the Conservatives have not delivered economic stability over the past few years.
Well, they're wrong, aren't they?
Well, they're not totally wrong.
You said so slightly wrong.
But you're right. You're right that world interest rates are going to go up anyway.
Yeah.
The inflation was caused by factors outside this country.
Yes.
Generally, the fact that the public finances are in a mess is down to the fact that we had the coronavirus.
Yeah, and we borrowed loads and loads of money, and we didn't really have the money to borrow, so we just sort of invented it. But we're not. I mean, nobody in their right mind would describe any Western European country as economically unstable.
No, quite. But the point that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are trying to make in that first pledge, and there is a bit more wording presumably on the back of the card. I don't know where it is, but I mean, I've seen it in the press release, which talks about how Labour's not going to put up taxes,
right.
And is going to deliver the lowest possible interest rates. So it is.
Well, that's not within their purview, is it? They can't do that. They can't. It can't affect the price of interest. They can't do that. It's the Bank of England's job.
Well, no, that is the point of the Liz Truss lesson, was that you can affect the interest rates. I mean, interest rates started going up because Liz Truss was trying to do unfunded tax cuts, and the markets took fright and therefore wouldn't lend money to the government. I mean, that's when interest rates went up.
Yes, but the Bank of England had kept those interest rates artificially low because they didn't do their job properly, and that was the Bank of England's problem, not the government's. The government couldn't affect anything on that front, could it? Because you can't go to the Bank of England and say, by the way, would you mind putting the interest rates up?
Well, no, you can't, because the Bank of England sets interest rates independently.
Exactly. So the Bank of England decided
of the last Labour government.
So the Bank of England decided to put the interest rates up. It wasn't anything Liz Truss did. It was the Bank of England decided as a result of what happened.
Mike. You can't. The Bank of England cannot defy market forces in the end. You cannot buck the market.
No, but what I'm saying is that it was the choice. But it was the choice of the Bank of England to put the interest rates up.
No. If the markets will not lend to the government because they think the government's embarking on a mad fiscal experiment of unfunded tax cuts, then interest rates will go up. They have to go up because the government will have to pay more.
But it's a very complicated situation because, as you well know, the markets were very, very happy to make bucket loads of money off of what Liz Truss said and say, oh, but now we're not going to lend you any money. No. So, I mean, they're not exactly, cleaner than clean, are they?
No, that's not what happened at all. I mean, the markets took fright because they thought the government was pursuing...
The markets didn't take fright. The markets made a massive profit. I know people that work in the markets. They're all driving around in new Lamborghinis as a result. Thanks very much.
No, that's a ridiculous...
It's not. It really isn't.
No, well, obviously, some people make a lot of money.
Loads of people made money on the day that Liz Truss announced those cuts.
That's how capitalism works, Mike.
Sorry?
That's how capitalism works.
Exactly. See, don't blame it all on the Prime Minister, is what I'm saying, and don't blame it all...
No, I'm blaming it all on the Prime Minister. She tried to make unfunded tax cuts, which were unsustainable.
I'm not having it.
It's quite rightly, reflecting reality, decided this wasn't going to work, and therefore they weren't going to lend money to the government.
Right.
That is
so
what
why didn't the government just make money like they did before, when they had quantitative easing? George Osborne didn't need to borrow money from the markets, he just invented it.
No, that's not...
That's exactly what he did.
Well, again, that is far too simple. Well,
I'm sorry to be simplistic, but that's what happened.
No, you cannot just print money.
You can.
Well, you can, but...
That's what they did.
There are consequences, and for a long time...
But they still did it.
For a long time, those consequences didn't come back to bite the government.
No.
But
after Liz Truss's 1 month in charge, they did.
Yes, I'm afraid they did.
Do you not smell a rat there?
Very irresponsible and so unsustainable that it couldn't go on.
Yeah, but you do see that most people, John, listening to this conversation will understand what I'm saying is that the two situations were almost identical, except in one case, the markets didn't like it, and in another case, the markets did nothing about it at all.
Yeah, well, that's the difference. If the markets are happy with it, then that's fine. If the markets are not happy with it, then you can't do it.
Well, now you're starting to sound like Liz Truss, like there was some kind of conspiracy against her.
No.
By the markets.
No.
Well, you just said it.
Yeah, but the point is, you have to accept what the markets will buy.
Yes, but they bought it from George Osborne. Why didn't they buy? But why didn't they buy it from Liz Truss? They bought it from George Osborne
because she was talking absolute nonsense and it was unsustainable. Whereas what George Osborne...
George Osborne was not... This is the man who put a tax on pasties and then took it off again 10 minutes later. You're saying he wasn't talking nonsense.
What he was doing was acceptable to the markets.
Right.
Because
it was down to the markets then, as we said earlier.
Yes, but the markets reflect reality, Mark.
Really? I mean, that's the best thing I've heard all week. Blimey. Anyway, how's he going to make
economics lessons?
How is he going to make... I studied economics at university. How is he going to make economic stability work then, exactly?
Well, he and Rachel Reeves are going to sound very serious. They're going to sound very serious and responsible and use the word ironclad and fiscal responsibility a lot.
She's not going to be the Iron Chancellor too, is she?
Yeah, she is.
Is she?
She's very much modelling herself on Gordon Brown.
Really?
And
well, I hope she's not going to sell off all the gold like he did. At rock bottom prices.
There isn't any gold left to sell.
No, he sold it all at rock bottom prices. That wasn't very iron of him, was it?
It was a perfectly sensible thing to do, but we won't get into another economics lesson.
Well, I'm pleased that you think you're giving me an economics lesson. Let's talk about something far more serious, actually, while I've got you on, because very alarming what's happened in Slovakia. Obviously, most of us, and I include myself, don't know very much about Slovakia and the Prime Minister, but obviously I've read this morning what's happened. People are saying it's a wake-up call to the West, a lot of worries about Russia's interference possibly in the way that the government was being run. He's in very serious condition. I mean, it's quite an alarming state of affairs, isn't it?
Yeah, it's extremely worrying. I mean, I must admit, like you, I knew very little about Slovakia. I knew that it had a populist, pro-Russian prime minister. But beyond that, I didn't know.
Who's been getting more pro-Russian, I think, in recent times.
Quite. But I don't know what the significance of this assassination attempt is going to be in the end. I mean, I don't know what effect it's going to have on Slovakian politics and on European politics more generally. I mean, you know, it could be one of those. It could be one of those Franz Ferdinand moments where it triggers consequences elsewhere. But I mean, on the other hand, it could just be one of those random. Well, not. I mean, it's obviously not random, but it could be.
It could just be somebody who's decided to
an isolated event.
Yes, it could. But I suppose looking at the situation in Georgia at the moment, where there's been mass protests going on and quite a lot of crackdowns from the sort of, again, slightly pro-Russian government there, you wonder whether this is kind of Putin stretching out his tentacles to see what happens.
Well, absolutely, and the question is, you know, can people power in places like Georgia resist Russia or resist Putin more specifically, and that's why it's so important that we stand by Ukraine, because I mean I think that's the real test of wills between free peoples in Europe and Vladimir Putin. So that's why it's so important that we stand by Ukraine, I think, because it's important that Ukraine. I mean, everybody says it's important that Ukraine wins. It's much more important that Ukraine doesn't lose.
Yes.
I think.
Yes, I think. But again, I mean, that's another one for another time, perhaps. But the people in this country, and certainly some of the people in the US, are asking questions quite rightly as to how long that amount of support goes on for, because at the moment it doesn't seem to have an end. Well,
absolutely, and that's the problem with setting not losing as your objective.
Right.
It does imply that this is a war that could go on for forever, and a sort of stable state almost, because we now read that Ukraine is pushing back against this Russian offensive.
Yes,
it seems as if it's not going to go. It's not going to go anywhere, and it could go on for years and years.
Yes, I think that's what people worry about. Well, John, good to talk to you. I'm delighted to be able to give you a lesson in common sense. I know you thought you gave me a lesson in economics, but there we are.